Hello, welcome.
Hi.
Thank you all for being here. Right, I'm going to kick things off. Going to kick this session off with a fun fact. Most bears live for about 20 to 30 years, but this hairy hero right here has just turned 80. I'm not going to make you all sing happy birthday, don't worry. Maybe towards the end, if we run out of time or something like that, we can do that. But I'm thrilled to lead this panel talking about Smokey Bear, pictured here, and his amazing legacy and the future of Smokey Bear. Now, I'm just a silly Brit who writes about adverts on shots.net, so I know very little about this bear. But we have three genuine Smokey stans next to me. We have Meredith Brace, Chief Marketing Officer at XR Extreme Reach. Laurie Keith, sorry, I didn't leave space for a whoop there, did I? Thank you very much. I didn't get a whoop on my bit, but never mind. Laurie Keith, Vice President of Emerging Media and Technology at the Ad Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Todd Sussmann, Chief Strategy Officer at FCB New York.
Kick that guy out. That guy's been drinking all day. Get him out of here. Security, get him out of here.
Okay, we're going to try and cover a range of topics here today, from the origins of Smokey Bear to the evolution of the character, how he continues to reach audiences. We also want to explore what's next for Smokey, especially in the context of climate change and future strategies. Now, we're not going to open questions up to you lot, not because we don't love you dearly. It's because you can grill these guys on, get this, the Bear Essentials, over a glass, thank you very much, over a glass of rosé after this session. Now, to kick things off, we're going to watch Smokey's latest adventure, and then, I've got another one coming up, then we're going to get down to our fireside chat. Pun very much intended. Roll VT.
Keep the puns coming, I love it.
For decades, I've taught you everything I know. How to safely build a fire. How to control the flames. What to do with hot coals. How to secure your chains.
There's no sparks.
But I can only teach wildfire prevention. Only you can prevent wildfires.
Yes.
What a soothing bear he is. Now, Laurie, I'm going to pick on you first.
Okay.
Because I'm sure a lot of people in this room know who Smokey Bear is, especially if you're of the American persuasion. But a number of international people may not. So can you give us like a little idea of who Smokey is and why he's lasted this long?
Well, this is Smokey Bear. He's recognized by 80% of Americans, so I think that's pretty amazing brand recognition. The campaign started in 1944, 80 years ago, with the USDA Forest Service and the National Association of State Foresters and the Ad Council and FCB. And Smokey came just a little time after that. And I think the reason why he stays so relevant for this long is because his message is clear and simple. Only you can prevent wildfires. Still today, 9 out of 10 unwanted wildfires are caused by humans, so his message could not be more relevant today, especially as more people are living near, more and more people are moving near, wildlands, and the potential of being involved or living close to a wildfire is very evident, so he needs to stay relevant, and he does. But the distribution of his message is fluid. So depending on how people are consuming media and where they're spending their time, that's where we need to make sure that Smokey Bear's message is. And I'll talk a little bit more today about how we do that, but that's how he stays relevant, and this message of only you can prevent wildfires is out there, and everyone recognizes it.
I mean, you talk there about sharing the message now, but obviously if my history is correct, smartphones weren't quite around in 1944. So what were those? What were those initial messages, and how was it sort of broadcast?
Yeah, so there were no TVs in the 1940s. Some of you may recall. I don't remember. And so his the original, Smokey appeared on posters and cards. It was an image of him pouring water over coals. And then by the 1950s is when he really seeped into American culture, and he was appearing across all mediums. And, it was then that, of course, you're a great example. He is now appearing on merchandise, and he has his own social media channels. And so it's just kind of the evolution of him and making sure that his message is across all mediums is what's kept him relevant for so long.
So there was also a little bit to that story that I find
Please.
fascinating, is there was a real Smokey Bear. Does everyone know that?
I was told this morning by ChatGPT.
So it's got to be
done my
true.
research.
Oh, see, do you see how quickly this panel becomes an AI panel? It's amazing.
I didn't want to say that. I thought this was going to be the one.
Let's talk AI again.
Smokey's in the data sets. This is great.
So there was a real Smokey Bear. And this is a quick aside, but I find it fascinating. There was a big fire in New Mexico in like 1950 something or 40 whatever it was. And they found a baby cub in the fire, and they rescued him. They brought him to D.C., they nursed him up, and he was like the Smokey Bear for a long time. He was actually like one of the most sought-after exhibits at the zoo, at the D.C. Zoo, for a super long time, and I think until like a panda bear showed up and kicked him off the top list. But it was true. There's like a lot of like truth behind Smokey Bear. Like he was named after this guy Smokin' Joe, who was a fireman. He was born after sort of the idea of how do we preserve the forestry at a time of war, because it was actually like part of the War Council. And so like there's a lot of depth to it beyond just sort of where he is now. That actually came from this like true, like really interesting origin story.
I love that.
Yeah, so how much has the sort of the image of Smokey changed over those years? Because he's a bear who definitely knows how to stop fires, but he also is quite a natty dresser, if you don't mind me saying so. Has that always been the look, and has that ever changed?
Yeah, I mean, the essence of him has pretty much stayed the same. And I think that's part of the power of it, right? It's like we talk a lot about brands and sort of consistency. Like this is a master class in how you sort of know your brand, you have your DBAs, and like you set it for a long time. So the hat, the pants, the belt buckle, all of that, the shovel, all those things are constants. I think in terms of how he comes to life, in terms of like his fitness has changed every once in a while.
It's pretty good looking if you know.
The fur has changed. How we brought him to life recently has changed as well in terms of how he speaks, how he shows up. That part has like changed a little bit, but the essence of him has stayed consistent for 8 years.
Well, so we mentioned it earlier, but the relationship between FCB and the Ad Council has been since 1944. Yeah. So that's 80 years, which fittingly I found out is an oak anniversary. So there we go. I mean, we don't want them to be set on fire.
Did ChatGPT tell you that as well?
No, that was Google, I think its name is. Yeah, I don't read books. It's weird. But how? So it would be interesting to know how that relationship has grown through the years. I mean, it's an incredibly long relationship. So yeah, how has that progressed, and what works so well between the two bodies?
Well, I can start, and you can tag team on this. I think it really goes back to the missions of both of our companies, which is to be a force for good, and that's why our relationship has continued. Oh, there we go. For all these years. And I just, when you think about the generations of people that, are continuing to work on this campaign, people that, are no longer here, but and then the people that are here today still working on it, it's like shows you the commitment of wanting to continue to, elevate Smokey Bear's message and keep this brand so relevant for an issue that is still super relevant, and one of the, biggest issues, in our society today, this threat of these wildfires. So it's incredible, and I just look forward to continuing to evolve our relationship.
Yeah, I think a big part of it also from our perspective is, back in the day, FCB basically created the ad council. No offense, but Albert Lasker, who is the founder of FCB, was one of the first. He was like sort of the father of modern advertising at the time, and was brought in to help create what at the time was the Advertising War Council, and then it turned into the Ad Council. And so he was the one that sort of created the framework for how persuasive advertising can help do good in the world. And so for us, like, yeah, we've had this 80-year sort of commitment to Smokey, but I think a big part of what sustained it is that if you ask anyone that's in the agency now, it's consistent to what it's been, which is it's kind of an honor to work on the account. And I think because of that, it's not something that's like, oh, I got to do the Smokey brief. It's like, shit, yeah, I get to do the Smokey brief. Like I get to be in it. And so it's something that like people look forward to. And because of that energy, I think it sustains itself every time a new team comes on. So it's a big part of sort of who we are in the fabric of us.
Well, you mentioned there that the creative teams are excited to be part of it, but obviously with legacy comes baggage, and you don't want to repeat what's been done before. So, what, without having to give away any trade secrets, but what is the strategy for a topic like this, which essentially is for everyone, I guess? Like children need to know about it, grown-ups need to know about it. It can't be patronising, but it can't be too deep and meaningful. But so how do you find that strategy, and what message do the creatives have to sort of bring out, essentially?
Yeah, so it's a good question. When I first started at SB, it was 6 years ago, Smokey Bear was the first project that I basically worked on. And I came in, and I was terrified of working on Smokey Bear. Because of that problem. It was his 75th birthday, and I basically, as a planner, you walk in and your instinct is to be like, what's kind of broken and what can I fix? What can I help change a little bit? And it seemed almost impossible and daunting to be like, here's this thing that's been around for 75 years, that is one of the most famous, iconic brands in the world. What could I possibly do? And so what we started to do is we started to look into a little bit more research. And what we realized is there actually was a very, very interesting problem that had existed that no one had sort of tried to solve before, which is he had massive amounts of awareness. He was so famous, but at the same time, he wasn't being heard. It was like he was too famous for his good. And so what that meant was, what we saw was anytime Smokey Bear would show up in a commercial, in a PSA, whatever it is, people would assume they knew what he was going to say. And so what was the problem with that is what he was saying is actually really important, which is very specific, consistent tips on how to prevent wildfires. But no one was listening. Everyone was just kind of yada-yadaing him. And everyone thought, sort of, we came up with the problem was everyone thinks, I'm sure all of us, everyone thinks you're a good driver, right? If you ask someone, it's like, I'm a good driver. That guy's an idiot, but I'm a good driver. And so no one thinks they're going to be the one that starts the fire. They're like, I got it. And so they weren't paying attention. And so at the time, at the 75th, when we started to figure this out, that he's so famous, but he's not being heard, we had to figure out a different way to basically shock the system and get people to start to pay attention to him again, which was a very interesting challenge for a 75-year-old brand. And the thing we realized is it was basically in the middle of focus groups, when we kept asking people, what is he saying, what is he saying? And they kept being like, I don't know, something about fire and like putting it out with water. We eventually then started to change the question, and we were like, well, why does that matter? Why does doing all the things Smokey is saying matter? And then all of a sudden, everything started to change in the conversation. People were like, oh, well, because the forests are important. Oh, because the park that I live by is like, that's where my dad used to take me, that's where I take my kids. It would be terrible if there was anything that would ever happen to that. And so we realized that there is a new way we can start to have Smokey show up, which was to start to talk about the love of the outdoors and why the outdoors matter. And that then opened up the receptivity for people to be like, all right, let me listen a little again to what he was saying. Now I can understand why these tips matter. And so it's constantly trying to find sort of these little nuances that can be like, what's wrong? How do we twist it? And then how do we do it? But all in the service of the exact same thing, which is, how do we get these tips out there? How do we make sure people understand what he's trying to say because of the importance and the value of the message?
And I guess, regardless of the message having to appear fresh, technological advances have meant that there's now a million different ways that people may be receiving the message. So I guess I've kind of got a question that's going to span everyone. First of which is, how do you plan for that? How do you look to where people will engage with things the best? And then obviously, Meredith, with Extreme Reach, how do people receive that? What is it that Extreme Reach can do to bring that to people?
Absolutely. So, you want to ask me first?
Well, I'll talk first to how we evolve Smokey into the 21st century. I lead emerging media and technology at the Ad Council, which is, I have an incredible job to really understand the value proposition of new technologies and, where we need to be focusing our resources. And so, our job is how do we bring Smokey into the future? And so, in addition to just like the traditional media, which of course is a core part of our marketing plan, we've done incredible things with Smokey. In 2017, we built a snap lens, which was used by 2 million people. And to Todd's point, he had the same, we didn't get rid of the belt, we didn't get rid of the shovel. His voice was, growly. But you could become Smokey, and that was the first time that we allowed anyone to really kind of use Smokey's face and spread his own message using your own face. So that was really interesting. We also were the first government agency to advertise on Instagram back in 2013, I think it was. And that was a really just kind of amazing way to get Smokey into the Instagram platform. Now he has over 207,000 followers. Please follow him for all of his 80th birthday updates this year. And we turned his voice into a fictional AI character where, the AI voice was giving tips on how to prevent wildfires. To most recently, we put him on robotic delivery vehicles in LA during peak wildfire season. So when people ordered from Uber Eats, they saw Smokey Bear's messaging on the Uber Eats or on the robotic delivery vehicle. So those are just a couple examples of how we've continued to keep his clear and consistent message relevant in, using emerging media and technologies.
Oh, I was just going to say, we have the pleasure. Hello. Yeah. We have the pleasure at XR of being able to distribute a lot of the ads and a lot of the creative that these guys do in such a brilliant way. So it's really fun for us. I mean, for those of you that know, the Ad Council is able to get media companies to donate media time. Was actually on that side of it for a while too, and I've always loved to support these guys. But so we've been working together since 2012, and what we do is we deliver to media endpoints, and media endpoints can be anything from a television station to digital to a radio station to a out-of-home board, anything, but we've done 11,000 endpoints for Smokey. Woo-hoo. So our job is to make sure that those creative assets are stored and delivered to the right place in the right way. And then also kind of fun thing that we can do is, we can add accessibility features and do lots of things to make sure that everybody can appreciate the message.
Well, that was something I was going to bring up, because obviously accessibility, I think everyone knows that we, as a world, we are getting a bit better at recognizing that not everyone has perfect vision, that not everyone can hear. So how important has it always been to make sure that the message gets heard by everyone? Because it's not just people who can read and hear who will be going in to do some hikes or whatever.
Well, all Ad Council campaigns are 508 compliant, and so that means closed captioning on all the content, high definition images, doing partnerships like we did with Snap, where anyone can turn themselves into Smokey, and that's really important because you need to make sure that everyone can see the message, and you have to do certain things to enable that.
Fun fact on this, because we just did a global report on this. Visual and audio impaired people represent 600 million people globally. So that's a global number, not a U.S. number, but that's a big, big number. So if you're not doing those things to make sure that Smokey's messaging is inclusive, you're missing a lot of people.
Yeah.
Well, talking about numbers, I mean, I'm more of a words person than a numbers person, but I am always curious. You mentioned there's an 80% recognition rate in America of Smokey. But I guess, we're at an advertising festival. People do need to know about results. And I suppose it's difficult to truly assess because Smokey's been around for 80 years. But do you have any stories about how the messaging has been successful and, prevented deaths and the like?
Well, I think, the current stat that we know through surveys is that 95% of Americans agree that, they have, the opportunity to prevent a wildfire. They are part of the solution. And so that, I think, is very much aligned with Smokey's message. Of course, we can't, track, metrics directly back to our campaign. There's, different mitigation strategies and local and national policies, people moving towards these, wildlands. But I think 95% of Americans, believing that they, have, the responsibility and they can prevent a wildfire, I think is showing that Smokey's message is working.
And has there ever been a conversation about perhaps expanding his message? Has Smokey ever been put forward as a spokesperson for wider climate change views or anything like that?
No, we don't have any plans right now for that. I think for us, it's just making sure that his message, which is only you can prevent wildfires, to address the fact that 9 out of 10 unwanted wildfires are caused by humans. That is kind of his clear and consistent message that we want to continue to hone. So that's what we're focused on right now.
Typically, whenever we brief a new creative team on Smokey, that's typically round one of all the work we see is him tackling climate change, and we have to be like, yes, but, and I think actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's like legally he can't do it. Like it's a law that he can't talk about it.
Yeah, there's definitely, I think, some regulation around that.
I didn't know laws applied to bears as well. This is I'm learning so. ChatGPT did not tell me that.
Oh yeah, bear law is a big thing. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you talk there, when you're briefing people and you're bringing new creative teams for this, they obviously are coming to it with new ideas and the like. Where do you see Smokey going forward? Do you see any massive change? Obviously, we've mentioned AI, we've mentioned the filters and the like, but with a message that is so specific, is there going to be an evolution to Smokey?
I mean, we will continue to evolve Smokey where people are consuming media. So I would like to think, our focus areas right now are immersive technology. You look at Roblox, people are spending 2.5 hours a day there, over 70 million users daily. That could be a place, maybe Smokey Bear shows up there. Hey, he likes that.
He wanted to get involved in that one.
Maybe we'll make a Smokey Bear world in Roblox. We're also focused on augmented reality. We just launched a big campaign with Niantic Eighth Wall, bringing Feeding America's campaign to life in an immersive way. So that's 7.1 billion users will experience with AR this year. It's a fast-growing technology. I think hardware is only going to make it advance more. So we're putting, bets there that this technology will take off. So I could see a world where Smokey comes to life in an augmented way. Maybe he'll show up on a Twitch live stream. I know, just, keep following him along on social. You'll see all the things what we do with him, but he definitely will evolve.
Yeah, and what I think what's interesting is I think everything you're saying, like how he shows up will always change. I think the context of his message will always change as well. But I think what's super important also is what he says probably won't, right? And like that's like the hardest part and the best part of him is like his message is simple and he keeps saying it for 80 years over and over again because of how important it is. And if he starts to diverge, then people are going to lose the thread. It's like he's got one thing to tell you, personal responsibility, take control, and things will be fine.
And also just our partnership with Extreme Reach. I mean, we continue, as you guys evolve your platform, we will continue to get our messages out there where the people are consuming media. So, I mean, we are so dependent on our partners like with Meredith and Extreme Reach to enable us to be able to do that.
And I'm dependent on them to pay my salary. So we're all dependent on Extreme Reach for various different ways in this room.
Shameless.
Don't know where that came from. Sorry, everyone. Cut that bit out of the tape. Right, well, I mean, it's clear that we've got a lovely bear here. He loves stopping fires. I'm sure you all look like insanely intelligent people, so I'm sure you've thought of 1,000 more questions that I potentially haven't asked. But I'd love for us to stop now. We'll have a nice glass of rosé, and you can ask the panelists those questions themselves. So please join me in thanking Meredith, Laurie, and Todd. And, of course, Mr. Smokey Bear himself.
Yes. Thank you for joining Thursday at 4:30 at Cannes. We really appreciate it and hope you will enjoy your cocktail.
Thanks.
Thank you.